July 29, 2024. A very sad day for many gamers around the world. The day where the legendary Xbox 360 was viciously discontinued, murdered by its own creator. Well, not entirely.
While Xbox Live Marketplace and streaming services such as Netflix, for example, might officially be dead on the 360, online gaming and all of its core functionality is still perfectly intact from what I can see on a selected number of titles. But does that mean that the 360 is still a viable solution to play games online heading into the future now? Or should we just finish the job that Microsoft started and give this thing a mercy?
This is my Xbox 360. It's here, and it's on.
The Xbox 360 released on November 22, 2005, and while developers stopped making games for the system in 2016, official support from Microsoft ended on July 29, 2024. A near 19-year usable lifespan for a system. Really shows just how popular the Xbox 360 was. And I guess we can partially credit that on how disastrous the Xbox One launch was compared to the PlayStation 4. Even to this day, to a bunch of gamers around the world, the 360 is still a very popular console to play and collect, thanks to a bunch of limited edition consoles that were being sold at the time. In my house, we have 3 consoles. The OG launch Xbox 360 without the HDMI port and still running the Blade's dashboard, I might add, the Halo 3 limited edition 360, and my wife's Halo 4 limited edition Xbox 360 Slim. And there were many others coming out, such as the beautiful Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 edition. But despite all the positivity and popularity of the system, that didn't mean it didn't have its fair share of bumps in the road. Being the only console to charge for online multiplayer at the time really turned some heads, and the Red Ring of Death pandemic almost single-handedly killed the Xbox brand. If Microsoft didn't handle that situation the way they did, Xbox as we knew it would have been dead right there and then. Now obviously Microsoft was able to overcome all that, and the 360 ended up being not only one of the most popular consoles in the last 20 years, but the most popular Xbox of all time. And that brings us to today. Unfortunately, the 360 looks like it's been taken to the back alley and stripped naked. No more marketplace access, no more social media access, no more streaming services. The only thing you can do on the 360 now besides single player campaign is online multiplayer on a certain number of titles. But just how many of these games still have functioning servers? Will it be a great experience like it was back in the day? Do they still have a decent amount of players playing them? Will it be plagued by hackers? Well, let's jump into it. Now as you can see, my 360 games clearly favour the shooter category, but rest assured I do plan on adding more games from other categories into my collection and will try them out online for a future video. But for now, these are the games I'll be testing today, with the exception of the Halo series due to their servers being shut off. And we begin with the legendary Call of Duty franchise, starting with Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. For a game that was released way back in 2007, I'm very surprised that the servers are still live, and across other platforms too, like the PC and the PlayStation 3. Call of Duty 4 was insanely popular when it launched back in the day, and it brings back lots of good feelings and memories of playing this with my stepbrother and my stepcousin. And we would often play old school mode and laugh so hard at the ragdoll physics to a point that we got yelled at for being so loud. I mean, can you blame us for laughing at this? Now unfortunately, the experience isn't what it used to be. Not only does the community seem a bit low despite the player count recording 3,309 players online every single time I log on, which indicates that feature isn't working, but trying to play games like Domination and Search and Destroy, good luck with that. And my ping consistently hangs around 2 bars. Now sometimes I do get 3 bars, but now those times are pretty rare. And while this is a regular occurrence for me now and for many other gamers around the world, it's also not terrible at the same time in my opinion. If I lived in the US for example, the experience would definitely be different as most of the user base seems to reside from there. I guess this is the price I pay for living in Australia. But regardless, the game is still fun to revisit and play today, and it's also nice to see it not getting destroyed by hackers. Now we have Call of Duty World at War. This released 1 year later in 2008, and while it wasn't as successful as its predecessor, it was still very well received, and still has a pretty loyal following today, mostly thanks to the very popular Zombies mode. It's definitely one of the best World War II FPS games ever made. The live player count feature is working this time around, and it's definitely more populated than Call of Duty 4, once again thanks to the Zombies mode. The bad news though is that the not so great ping scenario strikes again, and it's the overall same experience as Call of Duty 4. But then, something incredible happened. While I was playing during a day off, I got into a lobby and I was getting full ping, and only then did the experience feel exactly as it did back in the day. I had to resort to the 2009 gameplay recording style to capture this history-making moment before my eyes. But again, most of the user base seems to be in the US, so whether this game is playable for you or not is up to you to decide. Games besides free-for-all and team deathmatch, once again, good luck trying to play those game types. So basically, a more populated Call of Duty 4 with a very popular game mode. Next up is perhaps the greatest Call of Duty game of all time, Modern Warfare 2. However, it wasn't necessarily a great experience. Even though the player count reports as 0 players online, it's still pretty populated. But that is where the good news ends. This game is plagued by hackers, and you just never know what you're gonna get. Best case scenario, the lobbies will be modified to include more players than originally allowed. Imagine 18 players in a free-for-all on Rust. Yikes. And worst case scenarios, you join a team deathmatch like I did here, but the lobby has been hacked to be a round of domination. Or worse, you get this abomination. Now sometimes it can be fun and a satisfying way of leveling up quickly, but when it's a constant thing and all you want to do is play a basic game, it's just not going to happen in here with all this crap happening at once, and your own teammates can kill you, making this a more frustrating version of a free-for-all. And that's why I have to ask, why? What even is the point of... If I want to play a round of domination or search and destroy or whatever other game modes there are, I can just choose it from the menu, and you should as well. Why hack an otherwise perfectly fine game and ruin the experience for others that just want to kick back and have a casual fun game of their choosing without being forced into a game type that I want to play in the first place, or being bombarded with messages that look like this that sometimes ask you to buy mods. To buy mods! The best experience for me was this modded free-for-all here, which was a bit more chaotic with the increased player limit, but it was still playable in a sense. Ping was the same as it was in the last 2 Call of Duty games, which that, combined with everything I experienced so far, made my time with Modern Warfare 2 not pleasant. No matter what way you splice it, no matter what way you look at it, this game is practically dead, regardless if you have a good connection or not. Modern Warfare 2 is just never going to provide the same experience that it used to back in the day. And finally, Call of Duty Black Ops. This one seems to be the most populated game in the series for the 7th generation of consoles. One night the service had almost 3,000 players online. However, they mostly reside in either free-for-all, team deathmatch, and of course, zombies. So once again, good luck trying to play other game types. This was definitely a much better experience than Modern Warfare 2 was from a hacking perspective, but I still faced the same issue with ping, and that combined with the console versions of this game somehow being stuttery in some areas, definitely took some getting used to. And the stutter seems to increase the lower your ping is. I do remember this being the case back in the day, and compared to the other games, it was definitely a bit of a learning curve. This game was a massive success when it first came out, so it doesn't surprise me that there was still a decent amount of players online, and because of that, I was expecting a much better connection than the last 3 games. But unfortunately, again, for me, and maybe for you depending on where you live, this is the experience that you could expect to get all across the board. While it was much more pleasant to play than Modern Warfare 2 was, it wasn't as good as the first two games. But I will say that it's really nice to see an otherwise absolute gem like this still thriving today. So if you were thinking of getting back into it, or trying it out for the first time, do it. They can still be picked up dirt cheap today. I got these 4 games for $30 Australian, and you can bet that I'll be going back and revisiting these classic games all the way up until the servers are no more. Now let's move on to the Gears of War franchise, and this is where things kind of start to turn south. I remember seeing the trailer for Gears of War 1 and being blown away by the visuals being so much better than anything on the PS3 at the time, and the PS3 is a much more powerful system. Gears of War was received so well that it's practically a must-have for any Xbox 360 owner, and just like Call of Duty 4, the fact that the servers are still live is just insane. Now, I had a PS3, so I never actually played this until this year, so please ignore my terrible gameplay. So why do things start to turn south exactly? Well, out of all the 3 games, Gears 1 seems to be the most populated. I tried Gears 2, but I ended up getting stuck on the ranked matchmaking screen for over an hour just trying to find a game. Then I switched to the social matchmaking mode, and at first I thought I actually got into something. Turns out it was just a bot match. And not once did I come across other players on Gears 2 despite other testimonies saying and proving otherwise. And I tried multiple times across 3 different days and at different times of the day, but still, no luck. And then when I moved to Gears 3, it was pretty much the same experience. Over an hour waiting in ranked matchmaking and getting into bot matches on social matchmaking. There was one game, however, where there was another player in the same bot match that I was in, so that's a positive, I guess. One thing I did take away is that all 3 games play the same way, and there's little to no variety from what I can see between each game, which might explain why Gears 1 is the most popular one to play of all 3 titles. And even then, the population seems pretty low. And just like Call of Duty, there was definitely some lag going on with all 3 games. But like I said before, other players have stated and shown that there is still a fair bit of players online and getting a different experience from me, so let me know your experience with Gears of War in the comments below. These 3 games cost me $20 Australian, so if you don't have this trilogy in your collection right now, do yourself a favour and grab them while they're still cheap. Physical media is dying and they're going to get more expensive as time goes on, so hurry up. Now let's give the Battlefield series a shot. Bad Company 1 and Bad Company 2 unfortunately had their servers shut down, but Battlefield 3 and 4 still have theirs up. And you might be surprised as to which one will actually give you the best experience. Let's start with Battlefield 3. The hype behind this game was big when it first came out in 2011. I jumped on it and I was not disappointed. It may just be my favourite Battlefield game to this day, and it still holds up really well in every aspect. The player base is smaller on the 360 compared to the PC from what I've seen, but it still has enough players to have a very enjoyable time. As usual, for me, there was a bit of lag for the same reasons that I've mentioned earlier, but nothing completely groundbreaking that ruins the game. There's not much else I can say really, because all the Battlefield games that came out for the first 10 to 15 years were essentially the same, but somehow Battlefield 3 just hits differently, and is widely looked at as one of the top 3 Battlefield games to this day. Battlefield 4 on the other hand, well, despite it obviously being newer, it has less players than Battlefield 3. This was my experience across 2 different lobbies in what felt like over an hour. There was a total of 10 players online and only 3 lobbies open, and if you don't have any of the expansion packs, good luck trying to join the session. It becomes a lot harder. I kind of expected something like this since there are better ways to play Battlefield 4, but still, with the game being newer despite what platform it's on, you'd expect more players. If you want my opinion on the best Battlefield games to get, it would definitely be Bad Company 1, Bad Company 2, and Battlefield 3. There was one game that surprised me the most out of everyone that I tested today, and that was Left 4 Dead. When I first tried playing it, I could not get into any game whatsoever, and I was honestly very disappointed. And then a few days later I thought, let's try it again. And now suddenly, I'm getting into games left and right. I got into a round of versus, which I had no idea what the hell I was doing, and then I got into a round of co-op campaign. This game was extremely popular when it launched, and to this day it still has a very strong and loyal following, with many diehards begging for a third installment. So you can imagine my surprise when the first time I tried to play it, there was virtually no lobbies available. And I do hope it's because they were all full and it's not from a lack of players. If you're looking for a quick go-to game to play with your friends, look no further. Left 4 Dead is very addictive. Once I started recording, I found it really hard to stop playing, and I ended up capturing a lot more footage than I actually needed. Left 4 Dead won so many awards back in the day, it's ridiculous, but it's really easy to see why. If you don't own a copy yourself, you are definitely missing out. And now, this is where things really hit rock bottom, because every single game I tried from here on out was just dead. Forza Motorsport 2, Borderlands 1, Bioshock 2, SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, Fear 1, Fear 2, even Far Cry 3. But the one that gets to me the most is definitely SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. Because a few months ago, a video was uploaded of someone playing it online this year. And yet every single time I logged on and tried to find an opponent, it was just dead. And it also really gets to me that these games were pretty popular as well back in the day, and they still appear to have functioning servers, but yet no one's playing them. And in the meantime, modern Hackware 2 is still very much populated, while these games are basically just sitting in a ditch, essentially rotting away. I really thought by the end of this video I have a more definitive answer as to if the 360 is still a usable online gaming system heading into 2025 and beyond. But now my answer has to be the good old, it depends. Regions like the US will definitely get the better gaming experience as far as latency is concerned, while others like me will get an experience that's either passable or just downright suck. And with the amount of games that have had their servers shut down, or just don't have anyone playing them at all, it really limits things quite a bit. The only two franchises that seem to be thriving somewhat are Call of Duty and Left 4 Dead, with Call of Duty being the most populated, which can either be really good or just downright disastrous. Or what if you're like, screw multiplayer? If this is you, then the 360 is still a great platform for single player campaign with loads of great and classic games such as Halo 3 for example. You could just buy the Master Chief Collection and play it on current gen systems, but why should you when a physical copy can cost as little as $5? And with the Xbox 360 emulator known as D.E.A.D getting better and better, there are now more ways to preserve and play these classic titles. And as long as D.E.A.D sticks around, we can take comfort that there are diehard fans out there preserving the legacy of the legendary Xbox 360.